At least 34 men were robbed and killed on the Oregon side of Hell's Canyon. You probably never heard of this massacre because scant attention was paid to it at the time, and it was subsequently buried by authorities and the community. The reason this mass murder wasn't received with outrage and action is because the murdered men were Chinese immigrants working as gold miners. In fact, sadly, we only know the names of 11 of the murdered men. The killers were a gang of rustlers and schoolboys from northeastern Oregon. I think one of them was only 15 years old. Eventually, 6 of the participants were tried and acquitted, while most, including the ringleader, were never caught or brought to justice. We might not know about this story even now if it weren't for 2 people: a Wallowa County clerk who discovered the documents relating to the crime in an unused safe, and R. Gregory Nokes, who has recently published his book about the event, a book he spent at least a decade researching. The result of that research is Massacred for Gold, the Chinese in Hell's Canyon, and tonight Greg Nokes is here to tell us about his book and the event. Greg worked for the Associated Press for 25 years and the Oregonian for 15 years. He graduated from Willamette University and attended Harvard University as a 1972 Nieman Fellow. He first learned about the discovery of the documents while working as a reporter for the Oregonian, and he wrote about the massacre for the paper in 1995. But his obsession with the massacre
In 1860, the Chinese were immigrants were almost entirely in California. They came to mine gold and also build the nation's railroads. And by 1870 and 1880, they moved out into the Northwest, but still the vast majority remained in California. In the Northwest, they also mined gold and helped build the railroads. The next page are key facts about the crime, and Roberta has mentioned all of these key points, but you can review those. But a key item to note is the 5th line down, that the bodies floated 65 miles to Lewiston. After the killers killed the Chinese, they threw their bodies into the Snake River, as I mentioned before, at the North Flowing River, and the bodies floated to Lewiston, which is where the crime was discovered. The next picture is a view of Hell's Canyon, and as many of you may know, Hell's Canyon is the deepest canyon in North America, deeper than Grand Canyon. It lacks some of the grandeur of Grand Canyon, but it's spectacular enough. And I'm going to stop here and read just a little bit overlook the opening listed the motives for the massacre. I had always assumed that stealing the gold was the chief motive, but on the later reading it hit me. Findley was saying that the gang's primary motive was to kill the Chinese. The gold, almost as an afterthought, would be the killer's reward. Now, as I got into this book, one of the things that always puzzled me was why the killers killed the Chinese. In this remote canyon, they could have just stolen their gold and left the Chinese alone, because who would the Chinese have complained to who cared? The answer is probably no one. But the fact that they killed them always puzzled me.